afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar on Women on the Go, Tipping the Hidden Gender Data Gap in Active and Public Transportation, a coordinative effort of the Women in Transport Leadership, as well as the UP Visayas Tacloban College. Before we proceed, in respect for those who go before us and in gratitude for our lives, we'd like to pause for a few minutes for our opening prayer. Thank you. For those who, in English, that prayer meant Our Father, an acknowledgement of a power greater than ours, an important reminder that we are held in the hands of those much mightier than us in this most difficult time. Now, before we formally launch our webinar, let me just remind everybody of some of the rules in this particular, when we're doing the webinar. Okay, let's just go. I think this was already flashed earlier. So please observe and respect proper decorum, particularly kindly mute, but you're automatically muted anyway. Please mute your microphone when not talking. You may also send your questions at the Q&A panel during and after the presentation in time for the Q&A portion. Now, please note that this webinar is recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then please, you have the option to not join the webinar. This is an important reminder. E-certificates will be issued to participants for the webinar incumbent upon the submission of the evaluation form. Meaning, if we do not get your evaluation form until January 29, 12 noon, we cannot issue the certificate. The evaluation link will be flashed at the end of the webinar. Also, you will be automatically directed to the evaluation form at the end of this webinar. Please be made aware that the seminar or the webinar is currently being streamed live through the Facebook page of UPV Tacloban. All right. So I hope everybody got that. And to formally welcome us to this webinar, I'd like to call on the Dean of the University of the Philippines Visayas Tacloban College, Dr. Patricia Arinta.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, colleagues and friends. Welcome to this webinar by the Women in Transport Leadership Network on the topic Women on the Go, Tipping the Hidden Gender Data Gap in Active and Public Transport. We in UP Tacloban College are gratified to be co-organizing this forum on this vital topic. The use of active transport is one of the trends that have emerged in this time of pandemic, alongside social distancing, cultivating plants, and communing with nature, relocalization, and health and wellness, among others. Many, if not all of us, have friends and colleagues who bike or cycle, usually for leisure, but also increasingly to go to work. Or you may yourself be an avid biker. Personally, it always cheers me up to see a photo of a girl, a friend, or former classmate, a daughter or a niece of someone I know, or their wife, sister or sister-in-law, biking or cycling. This is because while this may not necessarily be an unusual occurrence in certain circles, it is not really all that commonplace either. Even more rare are women drivers of public transportation. Even in the Philippines, where there are many women who drive their own cars. I have not yet experienced riding a jeepney or a public utility vehicle with a woman driver, for example. Although I have twice had the fortune of riding a taxi and car for hire with women drivers. According to the International Labor Organization, jobs in the transport sector are highly gendered and unequal, as is access to transport services. And the transport sector is still regarded as a no place for women in many countries. Studies also show that many women experience barriers to active transport. Whether and to what extent this is true in the Asia-Pacific region is something that our panel of experts from the Women in Transport Leadership Network will have looked into in their periodic review of the sector. In today's forum, they will be discussing gender-disaggregated information on the impact of COVID-19 on travel and transport behavior in 5 Southeast Asian cities, as well as issues related to the collection of such information. The implications of their research findings for planning and policy in a post-COVID world will also be explored. So let me welcome you once again to this afternoon's forum. We are joined today by a mixed audience of students, faculty, researchers, transport professionals, municipal and city planners, transport leaders and professionals, commuters, pedestrians, and active transport enthusiasts from Tacloban City, the 6 provinces comprising Eastern Visayas in the Philippines, other parts of the Philippines, including Metro Manila, and our neighboring countries, our neighboring cities in Southeast Asia. Indeed, one of the ironies of this time of COVID, is that we are afforded the opportunity by technology to come together from far and near to have interesting conversations on critical issues. So I look forward to listening in to such a conversation this afternoon. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Dean Pat, for giving a comprehensive look at the webinar. Indeed, this is the worst of times, but this is also the best of times, because this afternoon, I am privileged to be in the company of 6 powerful women, well, from all, from different countries. Let me just introduce them to you before we move to the panel discussions. Okay, we are joined this afternoon by Dr. Mali Guillen, who is a sustainable transport, climate change, and social development consultant, researcher, as well as professorial lecturer as well as professorial lecturer from the School of Urban and Regional Planning and the Asian Institute of Tourism, both of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and a lecturer from the Ateneo de Manila University. She is one of the core members of the Women in Transport Leadership, as well as a member of the Transportation Science Society of the Philippines and the country area representative of the World Conference on Transportation Research. She is an advocate of inclusive mobility during her graduate studies until now. No, it's not like it stops when you stop going to school. Until now, she is an avid advocate of inclusive transport. Also joining us this afternoon is Associate Professor Pawini Imtrakul from Thailand. She's currently working as a lecturer at the Department of Urban, Environmental Planning and Development, Faculty of Architecture and Planning, Thammasat University of Thailand. She's also the director of the Center of Excellence in Urban Mobility Research and Innovation. Her interests include urban and transportation planning by considering all aspects related to urban transportation, sustainable transport, road safety, public transport, and non-motorized transport. Furthermore, her expertise is also focused on integrated planning in view of all the urban elements, land use, infrastructure, economics, and social and environmental. It is also my pleasure to present to you the next panelist because she used to be my student, Dr. Annabel Abuzo. Annabel Abuzo is a professional civil engineer and a faculty of Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan. She took up her master's degree at the University of the Philippines and her Doctor of Engineering degree at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. She's a full-time associate professor of civil engineering at Xavier University and is currently the director of the Engineering Resource Center. Her current engagements include the Cagayan de Oro City's Transportation Master Plan, the Transportation Management Board, the Metro Cagayan Airshed Governing Council, the Transportation Science Society of the Philippines, and the Women in Transport Leadership. Her engagements and works is summed in her motto, integrated, inclusive, and sustainable transport planning and research. Also joining us, I keep using also, but it doesn't mean joining us also from Malaysia is Dr. Masria Mustafa, an associate professor at the University Technology Mara. Her main areas of expertise are traffic simulation and modeling, traffic operation and control, driver behavior, intelligent transport system, and advancement of women in transportation. To date, she has published various documents comprising of international journals and proceedings, conferences, and chapters in books. She's also active in entering innovation competition and has won several medals. I'm not sure if this includes medals from the Olympics. I'm not sure about that, Mas. Okay. Also joining us from Vietnam is Dr. Tri Tu An. She's the director of the Institute of Smart City and Management, University of Economics, Ho Chi Minh, since May 2020. She has built up her academic career as a lecturer at the University of Transportation and Communication, Dean of Faculty of Airport in Vietnam Aviation from 2007 to 2013, head of the planning department of the Ton Duc Tang University from 2014 to May of 2020, and a visiting professor at multiple universities in the last 20 years, including the University of Economics, Ho Chi Minh, Open University and Marketing University. She's also a guest lecturer, supervisor, reviewers for master's and PhD students at the International University at the Triste University, Hasselt University, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Thammasat University, Handong Global University, and others. I purposely introduced the last person because this person, I'm going to introduce next, was the was the head honcho in this Women in Transport leadership. She was the one who followed up with everyone, so we will form this network. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Adelina Mateo Babiano. She's a senior lecturer in urban planning at the Melbourne School of Design, University of Melbourne. She's an architect, urban planner, and transport planner by training. She teaches urban design for people and places, placemaking for the built environment, and cities without slums. Her research focuses on improving our understanding of how people interact with place to create unique challenges and opportunities to positive place-based change. I've already said that. She also leads the Women in Transport Leadership and an Australasia Knowledge Network, and is also part of the Collaborative Place Agency organization, an award-winning group of academics and placemakers delivering education programs focused on placemaking theory and practice. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I'm actually, I have 5 minutes to introduce 6 powerful women, and that's not even enough. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me then move to the first panelist to give us an overview of why we have this webinar, as well as to give you an idea of what Women in Transport Leadership do. Let me then introduce to you Dr. Danielle Gillian.
Thank you very much, Doc Sheila. I understand that the record will be uploaded soon. So thank you for a very kind introduction. It's really always a pleasure and an honor for me to be the one opening up this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Okay, this is it.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce this conversation on the challenges that women face with regards to transportation, especially at this pandemic, and of course to introduce you, our network, called Women in Transportation Leadership. To start with, let me show with you my outline for this presentation. So we'll start with the introduction, of course, of women in transport leadership. Of course, the gender and transportation context at this time of pandemic, and some overview about active and public transportation and why we're focusing on Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. As you are aware of, our colleagues from these countries, the academic will present the result of their studies, which is about tertiary level perceptions in transportation. So who are these Women in Transport Leadership WITL network? So let me start with how it started. It's actually started as an informal group. Most of us meet each other in this conference called the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies that holds conference every 2 years about transportation. And one of our colleagues, Dr. Adelina Babiano, read a book on the invisible women. And if I'm not mistaken, this book discusses the role, the invisible role of women in transportation, and maybe even in urban design, with regards to transport. So with that, and we were fortunate to get a grant from the Australian aid. And so we had this first knowledge network solely dedicated to empowering women and developing critical mass of female transport leaders. So this is not just all about the academics working on their papers with regards to transport, but also getting the advocates, getting those women actually doing something already or implementing some transport policies. So we had our colleagues from the different, like from the Department of Transportation, and of course from the Department of Public Works of Highway in the Philippines, and then some colleagues also from other countries, mostly from Malaysia and Thailand and Vietnam. So, and because of that, we also came up with an international research group, which is about gender and transport in Asia and the Pacific. And we were fortunate that around that time, we we're also having the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Conference in Vietnam. Wherein, we, as a core member, all of us had this forum on the Early Career Researchers Forum, as well as organized a cycling tour in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. But then the pandemic, and then afterwards, of course, we're all working on our different research or advocacy, as we are aware of, like Dr. Edardina Babiano here came back to the Philippines as a balik scientist or a scientist returnee, and still working on the advocacy as well as the research on transport, specifically active transport and public transport. But then the pandemic hit us. And in one of our conversation, as you are aware of with women, we always keep in touch. So, and then we realized that we have some common experiences and maybe a little bit of difference depending on the policy of the government. So with that, we were fortunate that the University of Malaysia, led by our colleague from Malaysia, we had this first webinar on COVID-19 and women's mobility. It's just really sharing what's really happening with especially with the women at this time of pandemic with regards to their transportations. And then we have the active transport and women's well-being in this year, COVID era webinar, which was hosted by University of the Philippines. This webinar focused on active transport. So this is about walking and cycling. So I think it's about time for me to also set this gender and transportation context. Why are we all here, and why is it important that we talk about the gender and transportation issues? So most of you may be familiar with the United Nations. The United Nations has the Sustainable Development Goals. So one of the two major goals I think that we can all relate is about gender equality and about the importance of sustainable cities. So from the data of the World Economic Forum, we found out that women make up 70% of health and social services staff globally. Domestic, sexual, and gender-based violence increases during crisis, and that women account for the majority of the world's older population. And the reality is that women also earn just 79 centavos for every dollar that men make. So I think that's a question of equality. No? So why do we need to know this data? Because we also need to know whether these women are experiencing good transport system, or whether it's in active or in public transport. So I think that's the context that we want to set here. So we all know that women make up 70%, but can we say that our facilities in our respective cities actually meet their needs? Do we have enough public transport? Do we have really safe, active transport spaces? So I guess the question is, where are we now? So maybe a brief background on the COVID situation, COVID and transport situation. I think all of us now have the same health protocols, the importance of wearing masks while we're traveling, keeping our distance, coughing on our elbow, not crowding our lifts or escalators, checking capacity before boarding, and of course, staying home when sick. So these are the photos that you can see. You can see it in Malaysia, in Thailand. It's very interesting, this photo. You can only see women in this bus, no? And then, of course, in Vietnam, where so many motorcycles could be observed in their cities. And then here in the Philippines, of course, you have this, in Metro Manila, we have MRT. So prior to the opening of MRT, there was a simulation. So you can see the photo here. They're all men inside practicing 6 practicing the safe distance. And then here in Tacloban, I got this photo from the Philippine News Agency. There's an inspector checking and ensuring that social distance is being observed. And then the reality also, especially in the Philippines, we have more people cycling, more people walking. Walking because, of course, during the what we call the general quarantine period, there's no public transport. And then the sad reality of how our street looks like, especially for pedestrians. So these are some of the photos that I gathered, my personal photos that I'd like to share. So what then is the issue? I think I've highlighted the gender and the majority of women working in the health sector. And maybe here, I think it's important to focus on active and public transportation. And we're very fortunate that we have our colleagues from Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines who would share their studies, especially the tertiary level perceptions in their respective universities. And from there, we would try to understand or maybe find answer to some of the nagging questions that we have. Like, how can we better understand the nature of gender inequality in our present transport system? Is there inequality? What are the challenges in collecting sex disaggregated transport data and how do we collect them? Is this really collected and are the voices of the female sex heard? How do we encourage active transport and the use of public transport? I think this one is with or without pandemic, no? And how do we analyze the data to inform a gender-responsive transport policy recommendations? And how do we increase the awareness of decision makers, to make sure that our transportation system is good for everyone, young, old, women, especially women and kids. So I think these are the nagging questions that maybe the data that our colleagues from different countries later would share. So I just want to end this presentation with this photo that I took. Every time I walk in one of the areas here in Metro Manila, I see the question when. So, and maybe this is also the question of when can be life would be like a walk in the park, meaning it's a truly one that is very sustainable. So with that, I end my brief overview of what the conversation will be all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. When is it going to be a walk in the park? Thank you also for reminding us that one of the most important characteristics of women would be keeping in touch. So even even during the pandemic, we have kept in touch. Now, as Dr. Daniel had articulated, the women's wishes pertaining to women have always been intense, but it has become even more, it has become magnified, particularly during this time of pandemic, right? So as Dean Pat had said, we'd like this to be a conversation, not a one-way description of what we are doing. So before we move on to our panel discussion, I'd like to invite the participants to please answer the questions. We have poll questions. I think we have 7 poll questions, right, that we will be giving. And we'd like everybody to enjoy. I would like to enjoin everybody to please answer it so we would know what you think. All right, and I think it's live now. We'll give you about 5 minutes to do it. Thank you. We will, by the way, we will present the results at the end, so you will stay until the end. So yeah, please go ahead. Participants, please let us know if you're able to get if you're able to access already. Thank you. Unfortunately, panelists cannot vote. We will have to just listen to them. Thank you. All right, while we're waiting, maybe you can have feedback. Is there any way of knowing if they have already finished, or a lot of people have already answered?
Right now, there are about 30 something people who have answered.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dean. So we still have about 300 more who will have to answer. Okay, we'll just wait for 5 minutes and then we will launch into the panel discussion. Of course, the participants can they still answer the questions even beyond the, okay, even beyond the, what do you call this? Can they still do that? Even beyond 5 minutes? Can they still answer?
I apparently not.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Not yet, no? Sige.
Yeah.
So right now, okay.
There are more than 100 people who have already responded, so that's okay. So we can give it
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can give it 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, we've breached the 50% mark. Maybe in a, all right, but still we're only 3 minutes into it. Okay. All participants, we would like to hear from you. Thank you. We've got 1 minute left. We would like to encourage our participants to please answer and so we can hear from you. Thank you. Oh, by the way, for those who are interested, as Dr. Daniel had mentioned earlier, we normally, during the East Asian Society for Transportation Science conference, we normally hold what we call the early ECR. The ECR forum, Early Career Researcher Forum. Thank you, Durley. It's actually a forum to help our young researchers in putting together research proposals. So we've done that the first time, I think, in Vietnam, and we will do so again back in 2017, and we will do that again I think we will have for the conference, East Asian Conference East's Conference on September 10. We will also have another one. This will be a pre-conference forum. That means held before the East Asian Conference Forum. This will be for free, and so we will post the necessary information. We will share this with the UP Tacloban. So for those of you who are interested, you can actually join this. All right, now we have 6 minutes, and I think we can end our poll now if so we can already move to our presentations. All right, so thank you for all those who answered the poll, which would be 236, not bad. 236 out of 300. 236 voted out of 329. That's not so bad. Thank you everyone for your cooperation. We now move to our panel discussion. Ladies, I'm just gonna call your names and then please just go ahead. I'm not gonna call you after. So the first would be, the first presentation will be done by Dr. Maslia from Malaysia. Mas, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sheila. Let me share the presentation. I hope everyone can see the presentation now.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead. Just put it on presentation mode. Thank you, Mas.
All right, okay. So, Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. I'm Masra Mustafa from the Faculty of Civil Engineering, University Technology Mara, Malaysia. So basically today I will present to you on the status of COVID-19 as well as the relationship with public transportation and also active mobility, Malaysian case study. So this is the overview of the presentation. I will start with the introduction about Malaysia and also the traffic and transport condition, as well as the public transportation, active transport, and also moving forward. So this is the introduction. In fact, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows already where is the location of Malaysia. We have a population of 32.7 million population in Malaysia. This is actually quite recent in 2020. And then our household size, 4 person per household, total kilometer area in Malaysia would be more than 300 kilometers square, in which 0.3% of them are actually covered by the water. And then Bumiputra or the Malay become the largest number of population in Malaysia. And then when we talk about male versus female, in overall, there were more males than female. In fact, in 2020, male population outnumbered the female with 16.8 million males and 15.9 million females. And males outnumbered males in both young age, 0 to 14 years old, as well as the working age, 15 to 64 groups. However, for the older group of people, females dominate the older group, 65 years and older, with 1.2 million compared to males followed closely at only 1.1 million in 2020. So this is the transportation overview. In fact, based on Nielsen Global Survey of Automotive Demand in 2014, Malaysia is ranked third, 90% globally as the highest private car ownership, and it's actually very alarming, in which 54% of Malaysian households have more than one car. So what we normally say, one baby born, they will have one car, something like that. So the thing is, the other public transportation that has been used in Malaysia, we have quite a number of rail-based transportation like KLIA Express, KLIA Transit. We have LRT in Klang Valley area, and then we have also KTM commuter, and then we have bus and as well as the BRT. This is the statistic that we have from Department of Statistics Malaysia. This is actually show the Malaysian well-being index, which is developed to measure levels of rakyat or the citizen well-being from an economic and also social perspective. So basically, we call it as MyWe. Okay, MyWe comprises of two sub-composites, namely economic as well as the social well-being. So basically, in overall, performance of MyWe increased 0.6% in 2019 to 121 points as compared to 120.3 points in 2018. So basically, economic well-being analysis shows that transport component recorded the highest index in 2019, followed by education, communications, and then in terms of social, the entertainment and also recreational component recorded the highest index at 132.5 index point. So as of 1st December 2020, this is actually our total number of cases in which COVID-19 positive cases in Malaysia is quite alarming, in which we have more than 100,000 cases so far, and then it keep on increasing every day, and then up to like yesterday, on average every day we will gonna record around 2,000 to 3,000 new positive cases in Malaysia per day. So as you see in the figure, state of Sabah and also Selangor become the first and the second highest state in Malaysia which records very high positive COVID-19 cases. And then since 18th of March 2020, Malaysia have already implemented movement control order. We call it as MCO. This is some kind of a lockdown also, what have been implemented in the other country. And then since then, a lot of border control, for example, have been implemented. And then some of the, during the first few phases of the MCO, there were some restrictions were implemented. For example, only one person per household can actually go out to buy all those necessary things. And then when we talk about perception about public transportation, this is actually the mobility status that we have. This is from the community mobility report as well as the Apple report. And basically you may see during the first few months of the MCO, in fact, earlier last year in March and also in April, there were significant decrease in terms of people who were going out for walking, or even if you can see from the right hand side, the picture saying that people use public transportation even is actually very low due to the movement restriction. And this is from results from the one that we have in a survey actually that we have already came up with. In fact, when we ask them how often do you take public transport to school or work, okay, every day. So basically, most of Malaysian, since I've already highlighted in the first few slides that Malaysian have a very high number of private vehicles. So in fact, getting towards public transportation is actually a kind of like a new norm also, but somehow we managed to get like a respondent who say they are actually using the public transportation before COVID. And then what would be the statement that prevent them from using public transportation more often? Most of them said that they are living in the areas or routes without public transportation access, and they were likely to use personal automobile as compared to the public transportation. And then this is a study that we actually did last year. This is during the first few weeks of our MCO in collaboration with Vienna University of Technology, in which we also asked them about the commuting behavior. Okay, so before COVID-19, most of them actually use car because they love to drive the car, okay, every day to work because it's actually convenient. And then after COVID, how did they commute? They had the same result because somehow some of them even have a less traveling option, and then some of them due to certain workplace that introduce obligatory to the movement. So somehow they have the new norm of working from home. And then this is also from the result that we had last year, in which for the groceries, okay, the results that for those who went out for the grocery shopping, so basically they were actually driving themselves. So before COVID, there were some of them fam pooling, but due to restriction during MCO, only one person can go out, so they have no other option. So they just went out alone. And then in fact, the there were also an increase in terms of having the, they just ordered online. Okay, so that's actually very convenient because we do have quite a number of companies that can simply serve that. And then when we talk about perception about active transportation, so Malaysia came up with quite a number of initiatives since a couple of years ago in order to promote cycling as well as the walking initiative. So for example, Putrajaya had already been had some kind of a plan to convert the motorcycle path into bicycle path, and then there's also what we call it, a company that kind of like run the initiative of having more bicycle that can be rented out. And then there's also active mobility pilot project that was actually kicked off in Shah Alam, in the place that I'm living right now, with up to 200 bicycle. And then we ran a survey last time in order to have the perception on active mobility. So basically, as compared to public transportation currently with COVID, okay, I would say that there are some something that they kind of think of, I mean, they shift, okay? Basically, before COVID, how often that they use public transportation to school or even to work, and then basically once a week or less. But then there were some results that why, I mean, the reason why they did not kind of like taking up walking or cycling measures, maybe due to poor active transport facilities, because in Kuala Lumpur as well as in Shah Alam, yes, there are infrastructures here that support the active mobility, but not in the other states. And considering this, if we try to kind of support or change and provide them with more facilities, would they consider to ride or walk? Yes, basically 22.5% of them say yes, and then 14.0% of them said maybe. Okay, so moving forward, this is a result that had been what we call it, a research by Hidayati, in which highlighted the recurrent keywords from Kuala Lumpur on-street survey. So in this particular survey, in this particular survey, there were reasons behind the self-reported perception of safety when we talk about safety. So basically, most of them think that street activities would have a positive answer. However, the stereotypes of the area, for example, the respondent give negative answers towards that. And then supporting gender equality. So basically, in Malaysia, they were quite, I mean, for us, our ministry really worked hard in order to have the balance between the gender, especially to support the educational. So we can see that from this particular slide, there are not so much different between the gender equality between men and also women for educational especially, and then for the other parameters, for example, health and also survival and also political empowerment, they are keeping up with that. Okay, the way forward, basically women in transport and active mobility, what we can do, safe transport mode for women can only mean better connectivity. So that is actually a statement from the UN. So what we can do, we can somehow increase the public awareness, raising about women's mobility needs with respect to local culture. And then we can also have the informed transport policy and strategies and also regulation. That would be something that we are trying to do now. We are trying, this particular group, WITL, trying to support the government in order to have a better informed transport policy with regards to gender, and then awareness, raising and capacity building for transport agencies and also service providers, and then routing analysis of gender and transport issues during transport planning and implementation, as well as gender informed monitoring and evaluation, and also gender inclusive consultation. So basically, we have to do things together. It doesn't mean that whether you are men and that you cannot simply kind of like give any comments or give opinion on women in transport. We need everyone to be together in order to achieve our target. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Massa. I know it's very difficult to stay within 10 minutes. Interesting topic. We'll go into that when we go into questions and answers. We now call on Dr. Abuzo for her presentation. Thank you.
Okay na, ma'am?
Yes, I can see you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to WITL and Insight. My presentation today is entitled Active and Public Transport Mobility During COVID-19 of Cagayan de Oro City, Philippines. Yours truly, I'm Dr. Annabel Abuso. My presentation outline will include the introduction on Xavier University at Cagayan de Oro City and the situation of the city during COVID-19 pandemic. Then I will discuss the result of mobility survey before and during COVID-19, particularly on public and active transport application. And in conclusion, I will discuss the challenges and opportunities of active transportation. Xavier University is a private, Catholic, basic, and higher education institution run by the Jesuits under the Philippine province of the Society of Jesus. It comprises the grade school, the senior and junior schools, and 10 professional courses in tertiary years. By 2033, 100 years after its Xavier University envisions to become a leading ASEAN university, forming leaders of character through its mission as a Filipino Catholic educational community dedicated to the integral development of the person for the needs of Mindanao, the Philippines, and the Asia-Pacific region, with the motto, Veritas Liberabat Vos. Xavier University is located in Cagayan de Oro City, the capital of Region 10. Geographically, the city comprises 80 barangays, which is demarcated by the river of Cagayan de Oro that subdivides the city into two districts, District 1 on the west and District 2 on the east. In terms of development, our city is already experiencing rapid urbanization. Urbanization brought about urban sprawl, increased density, and increased motorization, resulting to congestion. As one of the highly urbanized cities in the Philippines, our city will soon become the fourth metropolitan center of the country. According to NEDA, Region 10 is or as a major gateway and transshipment hub, key educational center, and center for leaders in both agriculture and tourism of the region. The monetarization of LTO in 2018 revealed that the top four transportation registration volume include 69% from private motorcycles, 20% from public jeepneys and motorella, 6% from private cars, and about 4.5% from trucks. From the 2019 Transportation Master Plan, household travel demand revealed that 54% of the trips are made using public transportation, 29% use active transport, and only 17% relied on private transportation. This means that the overall household mobility predominantly depend on the public transportation. During the onset of COVID-19, the Philippines struggled in coping against pandemic. Currently, we have tested about 6.8% of the population and 22% is based on COVID cases. Yet by the sheer size of our population, the country continues to struggle considering we are second to Indonesia. Cagayan de Oro is the center of Region 10, as well as the capital of Misamis Oriental Province, making our city the convergence of emergency and hospital support. Thus, pandemic protocols from March 2020 to curtail wide and regional transmission, all of which are consistent with the national mandate of the government and the Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, the peak case of COVID cases happened last October 2020 with a 7 average mortality rate of 40 The Women in Transportation Leadership initiated last November 2020 a survey on people's active and public transport mobility to address the needs of community during the pandemic. This survey hopes to formulate pandemic-related program, policies, projects, and promotions based on empirical analysis of pandemic situation in civic local community, in this case, the Cagayan de Oro. Results of the data reveal that out of the 332 students who were able to join in the survey, 28% use public transport, followed by private, public, and some combination of the three modes. 95% of respondents are students between the age 18 to 94 years old. 85% reside within the province of Misamis Oriental, and 91% live in the area for 5 years. And for long trips, 31% use public transport, 26% use private car, and 12% use taxis. While for short trips, 25% use public transport, 22% walk or use active transport, and 16% use private cars. 99% take trips from home to school, and 65% take trips from school to home. Aside from this, or aside from school activities or trips, 45% were made for leisure and social activities. Based on the respondent profile of public transportation during the pandemic, data revealed that across gender, 45% use public transportation on daily basis. The perceived problem in public transport are revealed to be related to safety and health risks, and most are prevented from using the mode or the public transportation mode because of travel time, nighttime safety, in-vehicle overcrowding related issues, and the general bias to use private vehicles. Based on the respondents' profile on active transportation before pandemic, data revealed that 37% use active transport to school, while 20% are prevented from using the mode because of distance, followed by poor active transport facility, and of course, weather condition. 99% will be encouraged to walk if network and walkways are safe, connected, and provided with supporting street furnitures. Also, they will be encouraged to cycle or take bicycle if bikeways are dedicated and protected from the general motor vehicle traffic, while 55% will consider active transport if walkways and bikeways or issues of this are resolved. During the COVID-19, respondents were also asked if their mobility have changed. In the initial assumption that mobility shifted from public transport to private and active transport, basically because there are certain changes in terms of inter and intra-barangay movement, online trading and e-commerce, shared mobility, and the rising Kadiwa and Talilpapa market in the neighborhood barangays. And so across gender, results revealed that 83% of the respondents' travel did not change, most of which attributed to the fact that schools are closed and students stay home. 68% of those who travel or whose travel pattern change were revealed because of the reasons due to health risks or the pandemic, local government regulations related to quarantines and curfews, and travel restrictions to cross borders. Thus, only 63% adjusted by means of changing the trip in terms of schedules, frequency, and purpose. During pandemic, public transport, 46% did not use public transport. Only 35% use public transport on daily basis. Moreover, only 71% use public after pandemic passed. For active transport, only 28% shifted. 90% of the reasons for the shift include change to healthier lifestyles and avoidance to public transmission related risks, as well as the limitation of the access to public transportation. During pandemic, respondents were also asked of their public transportation profiles. Across gender, results revealed that 48% will walk, while 47% will bike at least 1 to 3 times per week. Moreover, 80% of those who walk and 85% of those who will bike will patronize active transport after pandemic had passed. As a conclusion, Cagayan de Oro community needs to intensify the active transport thrust of the city. Last November 2020, our president approved and declared the National Cycling Month as a means to mobility during pandemic. The DOTR and the Department of Transportation and the DPWH already incorporated the active transport designs for future infrastructure projects of the nation. In fact, the city of Cagayan already also initiated the active transport mobility plan with me as the chairman. Still, the city's COVID-19 challenges and pandemic continues in terms of policy for safety and security, in terms of project, in terms of smart mobility, facility and infrastructure, access and connectivity, in terms of programs, and safety of pedestrians, children, the elderly, women, the PWD, and the promotion programs under alternative transport. Lastly, active transport sustainability promotion should include tourism, inclusive mobility promotions, resilient mobility, particularly pandemics such as COVID-19, disaster, and hazard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abuzo. Unfortunately, there were portions of your presentation that we could not hear, but thank you because your presentation made up more than made up for the presentation, for the audio. We now call Dr. Pawini Iamtraku for her presentation. Thank you.
Your introduction, and we are going to my topic of presentation today about can I share my file here? About the topic of the active and public transportation in Thailand. I could not share my existing file. Is that okay to?
Can you share?
Sorry, I did something wrong.
No, you're starting. Yeah, okay. You started screening. Yeah, we can only see your folders though, not your presentations. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, is that all right? Have you seen my presentation now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Just your folder.
Still that folder.
Can you try opening the file again?
And it should. Something wrong with
It actually showed earlier, Pawini. There you go.
I think, yeah, earlier it is all right, but right now I think yes. Okay.
Just open, yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
For some technical problem, and today we are talking about the gender in active and public transportation in Thailand. The presentation gonna consist of 4 main points. The first one will show you the overview of the socio-demographic profile and transportation system in Thailand, followed by the public transportation, active mobilities, and also going for some policy suggestion and recommendation here. We can see that when we talking about the country profile, particularly in Thailand, we are situated in the central of the mainland of Southeast Asia, consists of 77 provinces, and Bangkok, as you have known, that is the capital city of the country with the area of 1,568 square kilometers, consists of 50 districts. We have almost equal between gender distribution, like 49% for male and 51% for female, and nighttime activity attract more people to the capital city rather than the daytime. And we have about 18% when we talk about the elderly profile in Bangkok. Bangkok. And we can see that for the transportation system, when we talk about the public transportation, the capital city gonna offer you a variety of more choices, which allow people to enjoy more public transportation modes in Bangkok. And it can see that even we provide buses, VRT, SkyTrain, or subway, or some like paratransit like van, tuk-tuk, or song tao. But the majority of the popularity in terms of the road-based transportation is again, going to the private modes of transportation, particularly on the motorcycle, as you can see in the top of the bar chart represent the overall figure in the mode choice in Thailand. Based on this distribution, we are going a little bit focusing more about the perception of the public transportation in Bangkok. We can see that among the variety choices, prefer bus and also the SkyTrain of the mass transit. And if you look at the map on the right-hand side, you can see that we are about ongoing to provide more choices for the people in terms of the mass transit. The existing one is focusing on the blue line and the purple one. And we also have ongoing construction of the project for the light red one, orange, and the light green. And the future line for the dark gray and other color for the 10, totally about 10 lines covering Bangkok and the vicinity of Bangkok. However, we can see that somehow it's going to the very good trend that people ship themselves to the BTS or SkyTrain in Bangkok. But the reality, we see that the connectivity, accessibility is not there yet. That resulted to the problem of the gender differences in the mobility. We can see that the statistical from the surveying of the safe cities for women network, it confirmed that for the women who like to travel by public transportation, 45% of them reported for being sexually harassed on the utilization of public transportation. And it even worse that it mostly found that this happened in the public places, particularly on the utilization of the buses and also other type of public transportation. This comes to our thought that how to make it in terms of the better services, more awareness of this problem, and how to bring about more choices for the women in terms of the mobility. But when we talk about the active mobility, we are in the very low ranking compared to other countries. When we talk about averagely, people walk about 4 kilometers or about 5,000 steps. But Thailand, we are less than the average or below the average. And when we talk about the cycling, right now it's become more popular day by day. We have about 3 million people going to utilize the bicycle or cycling to do other activities. Mainly are male compared to female, maybe because of it quite active transport, need to be a little bit aggressive on riding. But on another way of thinking, we can see that among the non-motorization user, not only bicycle, but also pedestrian, most of the reported is found that 740 pedestrians have passed away or fatalities due to the road-based accident, and most of them are teenagers. And it even worse that Bangkok is become top 3 or number 3 among the most risk area for the people who ride a cycle to do any other activities. And it can see that the main issue is about the built environment or the landscaping and also the infrastructure is not ready for encourage people for enjoy non-motorization or connect to other public transportation. It's unsafe even in the short distance. People rather going by utilize a motorcycle to their destinations, and it seems to be inconvenient, polluted, unsafe, and incompatible for the vulnerable road users. And when we talk about the gender, the safety is become number one or the top priority, but it's not there. You can see the vendors, the infrastructure is not ready. We are talking about what about the technical standard for the vehicle, for the traffic management, for the infrastructure, and women seem to be require more attention or priority in terms of the safety and security. And it even worse when we talk about the COVID. Before we have a outbreak in the first one during the last year, March and April, but the situation going to be better recently, and it is outbreak again. You can see the increasing dramatically on the end of last year on December until now. The situation increasing quite a lot, and it become raise a lot of attention for all concerned authority, because it is the new cases increasing, and also the hospitalized and number of people got killed, particularly on the elderly group of people. And we can see that among Asia and Pacific, the changing in the lifestyle of people, change their travel behavior, the number of journey decreasing, not even public non-motorization mode of the user, and it's decreasing in all type of the land use. And we can see that the reduction in our urban travel is quite noticeable. On the right hand side, the city trip by walking and transit are decreasing, but driving is a little bit slightly better. We can explore further that this may be because of the lockdown measurement, that the situation of COVID effect on the demand, particularly on the income effect, the supply chain are disrupted, particularly on the hospitality. Like Thailand is very rely mainly on the tourism base of the economic. And it seems like the change in the number of the transit usage and also public transportation is also become of the main issues when we need to strict on the social distancing with the limitation of the capacity, and we are not ready for the new normal. In conclusion, in terms of the policy and planning, we can see that COVID-19 is the main catalyst for all concerned disciplines that we need to change or shift our mindset from the market or economic drive driven to be more balanced, more understanding about the lifestyle, more thinking about the ecosystem, and more focusing on the 5 issues that you can see that the safety, health become first. The GDP need to be more concerned for the ecosystem, and we need to think about the equality, the kind of the how to reduce the gap of the poverty due to the unbalance of the economic development, and how to think further that the human capital is also the top priority, together with bring about to balance between the mobility and city planning, to give the priority for more about active transportation, to really develop infrastructure ready for active mobility, and create the ecosystem, landscaping, the beautification, connectivity between active and public transportation. And also in this concern, women is about to be the top priority, because before COVID and current during the situation of the pandemic. We also have agreed that women is the most fragile group and is to bear with all burden of the risk of the unemployed, and also how to access the health service for this group. And we've seen that men always have very simple trip compared to women, and how to enhance women in transportation. The awareness is very important, but how to create the set of data for disaggregate this analysis to create the awareness to the society to make more friendly infrastructure for the women, and how to utilize the appropriate technology to bring about all data, create awareness, understand about the real situation. This is about the gender impact assessment that will help us to understand more about situation and create an effective and equitable platform for all, particularly for women. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pawini, for two things: keeping within time and for showing us the holistic way of how to move forward, particularly in mainstreaming active transport. Thank you, Dr. Pawini. Now we move to our friend from Vietnam, Dr. Trinh Tu An. Please go ahead, Trinh.
Okay, thank you very much, Sailor. So, okay, so I will put my presentation.
There is no audio, Dr. Tu. Audio is not shared.
Tuan, can you please share the, okay. Durley can share though.
Around the world. My name is. Good afternoon, everybody around the world. My name is Duan. I'm a director of Institute of Smart City and Management, University of Economics, Chi Minh City, Vietnam. So I think you are very enjoyed to our previous presentation of my colleagues. So now I feel very happy to share with you all about our results in the case study of Vietnam, that we main focus and collect the data from Ho Chi Minh City, which is from the south of Vietnam. So with our topic, Women on the World, my presentation will have the four main parts. The first one about the introduction, and the second and the third one discuss about the public transport and active transport during the COVID pandemic, and after that, and some highlight for the conclusion. So talking about the COVID background and the COVID impact to the Vietnam, and we're so proud to say that the COVID is not have the strong impact to our country like the other countries, because of the we had the very well managed and also controlling about this. Some way somehow we also have the very very serious period with the 2 to 3 week social distance. The time is different for the social distance is different from the province, and we also have some limitation social working. But nowadays we are getting better, and we also can overcome some of the difficulty situation. So with our data collection, we have the more than 300 respondents to involve out of the questionnaire, and they are contribute from Ho Chi Minh City and other 16 city. and the unbalance between male and female. And you also can see from the map of the respondent city in this research, and also map COVID in case of Vietnam. And you also can see that we also have the quite good number and also percentage to emit from the impact of the COVID in Vietnam. From the different data collection, we also have the age of the respondent very young, from the 18 to 24, to contribute to our direct questionnaire, indirect questionnaire. They more concentrate about, they more focus, they more from the bachelor degrees, and also, although they are single, and the male and the we also collect the number of the motorbikes for the households, and you also can see for the bike and for the number of car is most popular that we don't have, but more of them they have the 2 or 3 or more than that with the motorcycle. So we also can say motorcycle is the most popular vehicle in Vietnam. And for the, we also collect about the transport mode following the distance. So for the travel distance, less than 5 kilometers, we have the people go more from motorcycle or motorbike. And also the females go on motorcycle more than males. And we also have some we call rehauling motorcycle, like go by Grab, by Bee, by Jogi. And also the public transport is more popular with less than 5 kilometers. But for the transport distance more than 5 kilometers, the most also still like a motorcycle. The second one still public, and the third one will be the more ride-selling motorcycle. And we also collect for the origin and destination, and almost the respondent that they go from the home and they been back from the home. And they will have some additional activity in their trip proposed. Let's go with the shopping mall, the number 1, and go with the recreative place, and also restaurant and entertainments, or go with the office. So for their reason, changing day-to-day travelers, almost the people, they consider about the health, and they fear being sick during this time. And the second thing, that the government and community-related regulation for the quarantine and so on, it also make their changing. During the COVID-19, but now I think they don't consider much for the domestic traveler. And with the travel adjustment restriction, that they also have to change for the frequency of trip or a daily trip or routine. Discuss about the perception about the public transport. The people from before the COVID, they go not so often with the public transport. Almost they said that they go for once per week or less. And for those people, they answer once a week or less. They will have anything prevent them from using public transport more often. And they say that because of very slow route, the living staying area don't have the public transport access, or they are more like use automobile because it's more convenient and more flexible. And their feeling about the public transport, like a safe walking. Normally they say yes. They say safer waiting in the terminal during the daytime, saving using public transport. But in the dark, they feel not safe, especially we can get the results from the female. Another way, when we collect for the people that they perceive that they being a significant problem on the public transport that they are using, they feel like a personal safety risks, and they feel inconvenience and monthly per transfer for their trips, and also they also feel unsafe during children in the evening, and the females feel more risky and more uncomfortable compared to the male. Besides what, we're also asking about the experience harassment and for harassment or uncomfortable wise they are using public transport, and more female they feel yes more. And when we're asking about the experience follow the issue that why they are talking public transport in last 3 years, and they said a lot of the people, they said that they never had the experience on harassment. So it's quite a good signal, right? Besides that, they also have the experience follow the issue when they waiting the public transport terminal in last 3 years, and they also has known that they never had any experience in harassment. With the view that how they can make the traveling by public transport safer, so they also give some suggestion that this may make more safer for the public transport, like should have the surveillance cameras, or need more the police presence, or have to be improved the lighting on the waiting areas, or while ventilated in the public transport, and so on. During and after the COVID pandemic situation, we also can get some information. Like during the COVID-19 pandemic, almost people more the people they never use or they don't use public transport. Only less than 10%, and it's also the female that they use public transport during the COVID pandemic. And how often for that people they use 1 to 3 times per week. And after the risk of the pandemic, would you feel comfortable to using the public transport in Ho Chi Minh City? And we also can get 30%. They say yes, they feel more comfortable. And when we discuss with the people about the perception of the active transport, so before the COVID-19, the people they use by ride or by bicycle or by walking once or less than once per week, but when they give the answer once a week, so what is the following prevent that they take the active transport more often? So they give that the most important thing that because of this distance, it's very long, so they cannot go by bike. And some people say that they don't have their own bike, and some they feel that they feel not unsafe during the evening, so that's why they don't use too much. So what do they encourage them to walk or the school more? And they said that they need the priority for the pedestrian, and they need to feel more safety, and also should have to develop their network for safe to connect with the other public transport or the other mode. Besides that, what do they think that they encourage their ride a bike to school more? And they think that the most important thing that the should provide the delicate and protect by lanes. It means that have the byway for them, and after that they also feel more comfortable and more safer to go, and should have to develop their network for the well connected, and also need to connect with the public, and also have the policy change. So during the COVID-19, do you skip riding the bike or the walking? And they say no, they still go their own vehicle, because the most popular vehicle in the motorbikes is they don't feel any impact. That's one, and why they have to move to the safe. And the reason for them more to save a cost is more with that they have to change the healthy lifestyle, because they know that go by bike and go by walk is healthier and it's more practical for themselves. And during the COVID-19, how often they are working, they said that 1 to 3 times per week is not a higher number than before. And do they get the risk of pandemic? Do they think that they will be able to continue go work? And if they are going, they say, okay, yes, they will go. And you also can see the number is not so changed when after the pandemic, the most popular also keep in the number is the 1 to 3 times per week. So with all our quick results, we also have some conclusion. The first one, that motorbike is the most popular transport mode. That's why it's not impact. We don't feel the strong impact for during the pandemic world. And also the COVID still have some effect to transport mode choice, that they don't want to use the public transport. And for the long distance and the poor infrastructure, lack of connection and feel not safety, especially for the women, so they prefer to use active transport more. So it's all of my information sharing with you. So thank you very much for listening. And if you want to have any more discussion, don't feel hesitate to ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tuan, for a comprehensive look at how the COVID-19 has impacted Vietnam. As you can see, the shifting to active transport is pretty low during COVID-19, in as much as Vietnam has a unique position that it has the highest the prevalence of motorcycle as a private, as mode of transport. Thank you. Now we will go to that's her job. She will now put together all hopefully the salient points of the various presentations and also show the situation in Australia and what would be our call of action. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Durley Bobiano.
So I'll just be sharing my presentation now. Sorry. Where could that be? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Durley Mateo Bobiano. I am an academic from the University of Melbourne and part of the Women in Transport Leadership Knowledge Network. In this presentation, I will start with a background on the state of safety and security in the 3 cities that will be part of this presentation. Then I will share with you some thoughts on the result of the multi-city survey on sexual harassment and victimization in public transport of college students, mainly across these 3 cities, and in some instances, compare it with 2 more. So are our cities sexist? Caroline Criado Perez, in her book, Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, argues that the way we plan, design, and provide for a city service, including transportation, undermine, limit, and restrict our fundamental right to access the city. The lack of sex disaggregated data, which differentiate how women experience transport differently from their male counterpart, and how this difference has changed over time, makes it difficult to create gender-responsive and more inclusive transport systems for all. The Safe Cities Index 2019, which is a report prepared by the Economist Intelligence Unit, ranked 60 cities using 57 indicators, covering everything from crime rates and road safety to digital security and quality of healthcare. In terms of personal security, it ranked Melbourne as the 10th safest across the 60 cities included in the study. While Kuala Lumpur is ranked 31st, Ho Chi Minh City is ranked 36th. These 3 cities were categorized to be above the average in terms of personal security, while Manila is ranked 40th and Bangkok ranked 52nd. The latter 2 fall below the average. However, as will be presented later, gendered violence in public transport commuting environments continue to be prevalent in these cities. We argue that victimization in transit environments is also dependent on the physical and social context. In each city, there were on average about 300 student respondents who completed the online survey. The target participants were college students. So about 98% of the respondents indicated that they are in the 18 to 29 age group category. We had more female respondents in the city of Pathum Thani and Ho Chi Minh City, while slightly higher in Cagayan de Oro. About 6% answered preferred not to stay in Thailand, and about 3% in Vietnam. In terms of frequency of use of public transport, 2 out of 3 students use public transport at least 4 times a week prior to COVID in Cagayan de Oro City. In Pathum Thani, only 1 in 3 used public transport at least 4 times a week prior to COVID, while in Ho Chi Minh City, public transport is only used by 1 of 4 students who responded in the survey. Inquiring about challenges experienced by public transport commuters, about 70% of respondents in Cagayan de Oro City reported that they have encountered health risks and personal safety risks in public transport use, while 64% of respondents in Pathum Thani reported poor service as a key challenge in public transport, while 69% and 70% of Ho Chi Minh City respondents reported inconvenient transfers and personal safety risks as key challenges they have experienced when using public transport. According to Natarajan, there are 3 interrelated spatial contexts within the transport commuting environments. These are the walking environment, spaces of access to from the bus stops from your origin or destination points, the waiting environment. These are the terminals, platforms, bus stops where we wait for the next public transport, and riding environment, when in transit or one is inside the bus, trains, and other modes. The argument is that there is a difference in both the spatial as well as temporal experience in these 3 environments. Therefore, the whole journey approach provides an excellent framework to compare the perspective and experience of both men and women commuters across these 3 discrete transit environments that support commuting. Respondents were also asked, on a typical commute day, do you feel safe walking to the public transport stop, waiting for public transport, or riding in a public transport during the day and at night time? Respondents across the 3 cities feel safer in these 3 environments when it's daytime rather than nighttime. We categorized sexual harassment and violence into 3 types: verbal, which refers to sexual comments made, whistling, unwanted sexual teasing, and the use of obscene language. Non-verbal refers to unwanted sexual looks, showing pornographic image and indecent exposure, as well as stalking. Physical offense refers to groping, unwanted kissing from strangers, sexual assault, or rape. In an earlier study comparing Metro Manila, Bogota, Stockholm, and Los Angeles, or absence of some elements within the socio-physical environment or context, for instance, at the bus stop, station platform, or on board the transit vehicle, will impact on the incidence of sexual harassment. This means that women would be more at risk of experiencing inappropriate and unwanted sexual behavior, such as physical touching in a crowded bus. However, riders waiting at an empty, poorly guarded bus stop may be more at risk of sexual violence or rape. It is important to understand sexual violence and harassment as it is experienced across the 3 special contexts. Querying respondents on the type of harassment, either verbal, nonverbal, or physical within the walking, waiting, or riding environment, we found that their experiences are quite diverse across these 3 special contexts. Verbal harassment was more commonly experienced by students in Ho Chi Minh City while walking towards public transport stops. Physical harassment was more commonly experienced by students in Cagayan de Oro while riding, possibly due to overcrowding or while walking towards public transport stops. Non-verbal harassment was more commonly experienced by student respondents in Cagayan de Oro while riding in and waiting for public transport. In terms of victimization, a significant proportion of the students across the 3 cities reported having been victimized. 3 out of 5 in Cagayan de Oro City, 1 in 2 students in Pathum Thani, and 3 out of 5 students in Ho Chi Minh City. These results are similar to the Melbourne survey and the Manila survey, wherein 4 out of 5 students have experienced some form of harassment in the past 3 years. Incidents of transit crime and harassment continue to be underreported. The survey revealed that a staggering 90% of Cagayan de Oro students and 85% of Manila students who reported having been victimized did not report or make a formal complaint to the police. Slightly better yet still inadequate, only 1 in 4 students in Pathum Thani and 1 in 3 students in Ho Chi Minh City reported being harassed. Student commuters were asked if they have ever reacted or taken action or taken precautionary measures when someone has harassed them or when someone's being harassed to ensure your or their safety. In Cagayan de Oro City, 41% of the respondents indicated affirmatively, 16% in Pathum Thani, and 58% in Ho Chi Minh City. What is starting to me with these results, at least in most of the cities, is that the onus of personal safety is placed on the victim's shoulder rather than on society as a whole. The study found that safety and security issues in public settings emerged as a key concern that was reported across the 3 cities. Sexual harassment and victimization of university students remains a persistent challenge, yet this has not been considered as a serious enough problem deserving intervention. Several reports highlight the impacts of the COVID pandemic on safety in transport. Yet at the same time, it also opened a window of opportunity for enhancing and creating safer and empowered public spaces for everyone, particularly for women and girls. Because of the pandemic, public health protection has become the top priority, which requires adherence to health protocols, such as physical distancing and sanitation. While this has also severely affected the financial viability of operators of public transport, this also ensured that physical harassment can be minimized. This year, 2021, we celebrate a decade of UN Women's Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces global initiative, but gender data gap continues to persist. Encouraging more students to take a public transport, both for their commute and leisure trips, would require systemic, structural, behavioral, and cultural change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bobiano, for such a comprehensive look at the data and how we can move forward. Thank you. We now, before we actually go to question and answer, we would like to present to you the results of the poll, right? So let me just share that with you before we move to our presentation. Okay, can everybody see? Okay. We're happy to note that we have 79% of our participants are female. Of course, we're also happy that 80% are male. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, the top three modes of transport. Oh, this is nice. For this, it's 69% car, but 47% use public transportation and 36% walk to when they go out. That's high. All right, for number 3, actually, if you look at the results of number 3, you would see that this is really a reflection of what had been presented in some of the data from the other countries, right? So what do you think is the most critical challenge women experience when using public transport during COVID-19 pandemic? One, of course, is highest is personal safety, assault, and then the other one is health risk. All right, for number 4, what do you think is the greatest barrier for women to use active transport as an alternative during the COVID-19? Reflective of the other results, you would see that personal safety is really primordial concern for the women. So that means that this is safety from assault, crime, harassment, even accident. And second would be health risk. 2% actually said they do not know how to ride a bike. So maybe we should have more learning how to bike programs. All right, number 5, in your opinion, what would make public transportation safer for women to use? Again, very much similar to the results we have here. Police presence, because that would make women feel safer, and strict implementation of onboard capacity to reduce harassment by overcrowding and overloading. For number 6, we choose top 2. Based on your experience, which would be, what would make your experience, what would make you cycle more? Okay. I think Bawini touched this a little bit in her, I think Bawini touched this on her presentation. One is a lack of infrastructure. Therefore, people would like to see provision of a safe, connected, and protected cycling route network with supporting infrastructure. I think this was also presented by Dr. Duan towards the end. Or for the last, for choose top 2 based on your experience, what would encourage you to walk more? Again, it's all about safety, provision of safe, well-connected walking route network with supporting infrastructure, followed by amenity improvement at 56%. I would like to I think this is the presentation already. Sorry, does everybody see? Can everybody see the presentation? Yeah.
On Zoom, yes, but not on Facebook Live. I'm not sure.
Oh, because it's already maximized the way it is. Okay. All right. Maybe we can just share this as part of our documentation. All right. Okay. So thank you, everyone. As can be seen, you would look at it and you would see that safety, right? Personal safety and health concerns are primordial in the minds of people when they talk about active transport. All right. So thank you, everyone. We will now move to question and answer. Do we have questions? Okay. I'd like to ask the panelists, because I do not see questions yet in the chat box for the, what do you call this? In the Q&A box. Okay, earlier on, Durley was mentioning that the book on invisible women actually talked about, planning from the perspective, from the paradigm of the male. In fact, I remember she was talking that, even the way that they do anthropometrics of cars is actually based on the anthropometrics of men. So my question to our panelists would be, in your countries, how does a planning paradigm affect the mobility of women and other vulnerable users? Do you see this? Do you see this as do you see planning as inconsiderate of women? Okay, who can answer first? Mas is raising her hand. You want to answer first, Mas?
Did I raise my hand?
I'm just joking.
All right. Okay. Never mind. Okay. All right. Answering the question. Okay. Somehow, I would like to bring it into this COVID context. Okay. There's a report from Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, in which they have been highlighted that any policy response must be immediate because we have to take into account women's concern. And basically, as everyone knows, that when we talk about this health response, women would make the most, I mean, almost of the healthcare workforce, imposing them to a greater risk of infection. And then at the same time, as women, we also shoulder quite a number of burden at home. For example, given school and child care facility closures, and also be with them throughout their class session. And somehow, like what we have in Malaysia, I think our government had done good job. In fact, as I presented in the first few slides of my presentation, in which the government is actually trying so hard to have the equality, to have everything equal for everyone, regardless of who, to access everything, including the infrastructure, including something related to mobility currently. So that's what I can see in Malaysia. In fact, for transportation, for our public transport, we do have women-only coaches for the train. So that is actually supporting what the government, they concern about this, and they already know about this. Yeah, that's
Thank you, Mas.
Malaysia.
So that means that they're looking at women when they do planning. Durley has unmuted herself. I think she will answer. Thank you, Durley.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Napalang. So I think it really is my ambition and aspiration that we in the future, or at least in the near or at present, will be using the gender lens to actually look at our policies. It is not yet implemented. It is not yet there. And I really envy Sweden and I think Iceland, because they have, paved the way. And I think it really is important that while in Australia, there are a lot of initiatives already at looking at improving and enhancing active transport. So for instance, in Melbourne, we have a network of active, cycling network, and I do cycle to work as well. So I think it really is important. And most recently, when we were walking around, I could see that there is really an increase in women, taking up cycling. So I would always, do a count, for instance, at corners, how many women are cycling versus men, because I think it is a barometer of how safe a city is for women. And I could see that within the 3 years that I've been living in Melbourne, I could see that there really has, a change, a shift in the demography of those who are cycling. And I'm happy to say that there are more women. But again, it's an initial step, I guess, that baby step. But what I really would want to see is the institutionalization, right? How do we make sure that it is by default an important part of the planning framework, that we use gender and, gender as well as diversity and inclusion lens when we are looking at this policy? It is at that point that I could truly say that, we are part of that planning framework.
Thank you, Dr. Durley. So we're saying that it's not just there yet. We're having baby steps. We have certain policies, but it's not systematic just yet. But Winnie, you're smiling. Do you want to answer?
Okay, let me give a short message to support all the panelists here, that I think right now it seems to be not only the challenge, but it is a good turning point that we are at the critical stage of the pandemic of COVID-19. I think it calls us to think about if we still are under the traditional way of thinking to deal with the mobility planning, we could not cope with the changes, and also we could not cope with the disaster that right now is about the health issue in terms of the COVID-19. But in the near future, it may be in another critical of any other issues. I think to keep an eye on the policy planning to cope with the dynamic of these changes. I think the systematic way of thinking to gathering all data collected, I think this is a must to create the platform to see what the situation and have the dynamic planning and management as well, to see all of the users is not only variety of the ages, but all user is also not about handicap or the normal people, but it's also in terms of gender. Yeah, I think it's very consistent for our topic about the invisible and also genders, that many times that people talk about it, but in the reality, they did not cope about it. They did not really mention about gender in terms of planning, standards, technical standards in vehicle, in infrastructure. I think it's a time to really mention it in terms of from the data until the standard. That's all my idea for now.
Thank you, Dr. Pawini, for highlighting that this is, I always say, this is the worst of times as well as the best of times. It has given us a pause from what we've been doing so far. And so if we use the data that we have, we would certainly move towards what Dr. Babiana has been saying, that this would be from a more systematic way of doing planning from a gender lens. I still have two ladies who have unmuted, so who wants to go first? Dr. Abuso, she's raising her hand early. Sorry, Dane, so I'll let her go first. Dr. Abuso.
Allow me to share in terms of the perspective of your question in terms of engineering application, because I think most of the discussion a while ago was related to planning, but the Philippines in terms of infrastructure development are very patriarchal, and in terms of system of leadership, it's really patriarchal because the Philippines is influenced by the Spanish, and of course our religion is very patriarchal as well. And so in this standard of setting, our designs, our infrastructure designs are not motivated by balancing gender applications, which are which will be how to say balanced to all sectors at the same time across all genders. The basic standard is really on men, but not in those silent groups which are vulnerable, particularly those who are represented by women, children, the elderly, and the how to say LGBTQ community, as well as those who have some limitation to a certain degree in access to mobility. And with these pandemic issues, we want to bring forth that designs based on a given standard should be recalled and reviewed in terms of the application that will be sustainable for everyone, in particular those who will be the road users in general, not just the male gendered users. No?
Right.
Take for example, if we look at active transport in the Philippines, we do not really do bicycling, no. But Japan and Korea and some parts of Vietnam are using that. But in my results, for example, in Cagayan de Oro, we still look at this in perspective of understanding how do we promote this to women or to those who will be not into bicycling to really cycle. This is now centered on the well-being of people in terms of the scenarios when pandemic arises.
All right, thank you, Dr. Abuso, for highlighting that engineering, the gold standard right now is for male, but we need to shift towards engineering, which is also highlighting the women. Dr. Gillian, I ask you to answer, and then I will refer to the questions in the chat box. Dr. Gillian?
Oh, thank you for allowing me to speak also, no? But I think I just want to highlight the very goal is really to mainstream, no? The gender aspect in the transportation planning. And maybe I want to share my experience teaching the subject. So in my class, in my course, I have actually a session on gender and transport. And what's very interesting, no? And this was highlighted by my class, and I was just maybe really inspired, no? After they listen and they listen to my lecture about gender, is that after every lecture, the discussion would always be facilitated by the women, the girls, or the ladies in the class. And in one instance, I clearly remember one of my students challenged the male sex in the class, and they were highlighting. I think what we need are more like champions, no, from the male, on understanding the role of women. And it was really inspiring. No, I think being in this topic and teaching now in the undergrad and graduate studies, and when the male and the women will always highlight, the issues of gender, and everyone could relate. But what really struck me is when the women in the class
would actually challenge the male and telling them that, you know, you have to take the lead. How come every time we discuss about transportation, about active transport, about cycling, what you will see are leaders, are women really highlighting the need, no, the advocacy. For me, I think the goal is that when there's no need to advocate for it.
All right, thank you.
That's when I think we could highlight what Dorley has been I've been telling, no? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gillian. And it is actually like the High School Musical. We are all in this together. The fight for women's rights is really not just a fight by women. It should actually be a fight by everybody. That's why in WTL, we always say we want male champions, right? So that's why we also encourage male panelists. Right now we have female panelists. I have two questions. Although I was looking at the questions, they're not particularly geared towards women, but I'm just gonna, I will ask this question to Dr. Pawini. Okay, the question is, motorcycles are prevalent in Vietnam and Thailand, okay? How is it perceived by transport planners? Is this a way to go? And are there steps done to control the number of motorcycles? I think because of, I think Tuan is no longer in the call. Dr. Pawini, do you have thoughts on this? Is there?
Yeah, thank you for the interesting questions and the notice about the number of the motorcycle in our countries. Actually, right now, we are working quite hard about talking to our stakeholders. It's similar to the women in the mobility because it's kind of the vulnerable road users, right? For the motorcyclists, the standard is not there. And also the behavior of the user is not really collected in the way to promote for the enhance the standard for the infrastructure. And also we did not really investigate for the manufacturing of the vehicle productions. This is about to create the linkage when we talk about the accident, how to really understand the human factors, environment factors, and also vehicle factor in the same system. This is about the big gap about the promoting safety in the motorcyclists in our society. And we are trying to do the participatory approach to bring about this group as a society, like motorcyclist society, to talk about what they need, what the problems, and what we overlook about this group of people. This is ongoing, and very soon we are thinking that we will going to improve the standard of the highway and also the urban street design, and also bring about this message to talk to the manufacturing companies, and I think it's a must to think about it, because during the COVID, the number of the motorcycle users and also the logistic in terms of the delivery services is become really attract to the people to shift to this type. Yeah, this is a must for all to concern and to do something. Yes, the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pawini. It is true that, you know, it's not often understood just yet, but it is an increasing phenomenon in most of our Asian cities, the increase in number of motorcycles, not motorcycle taxis. And it's often not understood. In the interest of time, I will ask this question, but I'll only ask two of our panelists to answer it. Okay, what is your view on the issue of public transportation, which have not been maintained, sanitation and are broken and filthy? Okay, so that's a question. Mas, you're smiling. I will ask you to answer it for 1 minute, and then who else will answer? Okay, Mas, sorry, go ahead, Mas.
Okay, all right. The thing is, for public transportation, you cannot simply expect everything would be new, because you have to know that giving the public transportation services will not going to make the operators rich. Unlike those who are in Hong Kong, in which their public transportation operator can have a very high revenue in return. And so far, I think Luxembourg is one of the countries that had given out a free public transportation service to the citizens, to the public transportation user. So in fact, for this, I think it is us also, it is all the customer, it is all the user need to take care of. We cannot simply we cannot simply ask the operators to provide a tip-top service for us, because somehow at the end you are the one who become the user, and you also need to have the responsibility to maintain the cleanliness.
Thank you, Mas. That's actually a novel view. When you talk about public transportation being filthy and unsanitary, usually we answer saying, oh, it's the operator's task. But now Mas is saying, oh, it's also the responsibility of those who use it. You'd have to make sure that you follow, you also do what you need to do. Dr. Durley, you have an answer to this one. Thank you, Mas.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dr. Masrian. Thank you, Dr. Ampalang. I think I have my view about public transport, transportation in general, is that we need to provide options to everyone, whether they prefer to use public transport or private transport or active transport. But I think as operators or as planners, as government, we need to ensure that we prioritize the sustainable mode and make it more attractive. So in a way, what I'm saying is that it is there is a co-responsibility in engaging stakeholders or the users of transport, in engaging operators to make transport service much better than it is, and for local governments to provide incentives to be able to achieve those things. And I think we really need to think about what is the outcome that we want, right? So it is really about achieving a sustainable, inclusive, and better cities for all. And it means that transport is just a part and parcel of the whole system of what a sustainable city is, right? And so it's really about placemaking, right? What is a place and what is placemaking? And it's that meaning, associating a meaning to a public space or to public transport by ensuring that we associate positive meaning to public transport. And it's a huge task, definitely. We ensure that we are encouraging people to, love it. And when people love it, they make sure that they care for it, right? So I think it's a long-term and a huge task and possibly a difficult journey for all of us. But I think it's really a matter of perspective. If we as a collective, do our part, then maybe we can achieve better transport, and the negative perception that we have now would be something that is of the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Durley for mayor. I'm just sorry. Thank you very much for your holistic view of public transportation. In fact, we should have a webinar on public transportation alone, because that by itself is a really rich discussion. They were saying that public transportation is really the soul of your city, because although it's a means to an end, the quality would also not public transportation alone, just transport system would also determine the quality of the cities. All right, now I'll give you, each one of you ladies, 1 minute to give us your thoughts, your insights as we move forward. 1 minute. Okay, I'm just gonna go around because on top of my screen is Dr. Masria. Can you please go ahead and give us your final thoughts? Thank you.
Okay, I would like to quote a quotation from Kamala Harris. If you are fortunate to have opportunity, it is your duty to make sure other people have those opportunities as well. So basically what we have learned, what we have discussed currently is to have, is to give everyone a happy ending. So basically, let's come and join us so that we can simply prove everything can be done if we are together and if we are united. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas. You should run for vice president next time. Then I'll have I'll put you last. Dr. Gillian, can you please go ahead? 1 minute. Thank you.
Before anything else, thank you very much for this opportunity. No, it looks like there's really a need to discuss how do we really mainstream the goal of the goal of gender. So it's not just about female, about men, but I think all gender. I noticed in our poll, there's even the non-binary. So there's a big research opportunity when it comes to the topic of gender alone, especially in the transport sector. But I think what we want to highlight is it's very important that we really mainstream the goal of gender in our transport sector simply because this is how we move, no? And with or without pandemic, there's still a need to move, right? Even if you say that we're all on a lockdown, we still have to move to buy essential things. And I think the pandemic tries to let us really reflect, how's our city, because now we're all in our looking everything from the screen, right? So we will see how is it. And I think this is really a time for reflection and maybe a time for more advocates in this topic. So with that, thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Gillian. Indeed, this is just the start of a really long journey. Dr. Powini, may I have your thoughts, please?
Yes, thank you. I think right now, as we discuss about the critical situation of the pandemic for the COVID, it recalls us to rethinking about all the system that we are doing, not only the mobility for the government, mobility for the people, but the whole society. It's become borderless. Academic practitioner, country to country, and gender, male and female. I think it's about how to make balance and think about how to see the benefit from each other. And it's time for sharing, to do something for less, but it have more impact. And we focus on the positive impact, because before we always thinking about the economic driven for the country, but right now it's called us to rethinking about more balance, how to set the priorities, how to really see the thing in terms of the more holistic. I think it's the way that we need to shift to the new normal of this kind of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Powini. Shifting to the new normal is really not just about policies, it's also about paradigm. That's what you're saying. Thank you very much. Dr. Abuzo, 1 minute, please, of your thoughts on this matter.
I'd like to focus on infrastructure development, which is related to how we structure our design, how we look at the perspective of infrastructure that will benefit the road users, in particular for those who are the silent minority who do not have the voice to speak of their needs, but rather that as leaders to be placed in a position to decide and to promote for example, the active transport promotion right now due to pandemic. We'll also consider how people move, not just the infrastructure, because we have to create an idea of seamless integration of our design with the user's needs and mobility. In fact, I was also looking at how we could also address minorities in terms of their access, not just mobility, because right now in the Philippines, we have that issue. So I hope that our engineering applications for infrastructure these times of the pandemic will not only trigger us because of the pandemic, but will look at the sustainable and resilient application, maybe for hazard, for disaster, for climate impacts, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abuzo, for highlighting the importance of also using what we have, the technology that we have now in terms of using apps for this one. Thank you, ladies. As usual, 2 hours is really not enough for us to discuss everything that we want to discuss, but we must end sometime or we would be kicked out if we don't end soon. To formally close our webinar this afternoon, I'd like to call on Professor Anida Bernadette Batan Lorenzo, Coordinator of the Gender and Development Program of UP Visayas Tacloban College. Ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon again. First and foremost, the Women in Transport Leadership Knowledge Network and the University of the Philippines Tacloban College would like to thank all participants from here and overseas. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our remarkable speakers. We are so happy that we had an overwhelming response to our invitation. So kudos to the collaboration of UP Tacloban and WITL webinar team. Great job. And most of all, we would like to thank our speakers for a very enlightening afternoon. Thank you for opening our eyes wider to the issues that women face in using public transport as well as the active transport. We in gender now realize more that we still have a lot of work to do. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Abuso, Dr. Mustafa, Dr. Gillian, Dr. Tuan, Dr. Yamtakul, and of course, Dr. Durley Babiano. And thank you so much for a very exceptional moderating of this webinar, the very bubbly Dr. Sheila Napalang. So again, good afternoon. Thank you. And I turn the microphone over to Dr. Napalang.
Thank you very much, Professor Lorenzo. And it's been a pleasure for us. I just would like to remind our participants that if you want to get an e-certificate, to please make sure that you fill out the evaluation form, and I think it will be flashed soon. Or if not, you will be directed to the evaluation site after the seminar. And also, it's also found on the chat. And also, I'd like to remind everybody to please stay tuned. It's on the chat. Please stay tuned for more information on our activities in the future for the Easts, as well as the Early Career Research Forum. Thank you, everyone. And as usual, please keep safe and well. Thank you.
Okay na mag-out, ma'am? Ma'am Shi, thank you.
Thank you.